Roy Morgan's here,
When are you moving head office here?
That's a good question. When someone buys a lot of data.
Do you give the same presentation in Auckland?
We will be. This is the first point. Yes. Absolutely.
Are you talking to our Prime Minister?
Well, I don't know. I think it's an interesting point, isn't it? That when I landed here yesterday, Pip said to me, you know, that he'd come out and said Wellington's dying, and I thought, well, why did he say that? And you know, because there's two things. Is that a truthful statement? You know, what is the factual basis for that? And quite separately, why did you say it? And you know, I've been thinking, it may have been a slip of the tongue. It may have been a challenge. You know, it could well have been a challenge, because if I look at this data, and one of the questions that people keep asking me in radio interviews is, so where's the best place to live? And it's a tough call, isn't it? Because people find the place that they're comfortable with. And I think anyone here can feel like these are good numbers, these make sense, and they explain Wellington, they make it seem like a good place to be. But if you were a youngster in Auckland who just arrived here and wanted to have a crazy time, maybe you'd say that's the place to be for you. And if you didn't want any of this happening action, you just wanted a quiet life, well then stay outside these places. It's what you actually want. The only downside I see, the only danger at all in these numbers for Wellington, apart from the breathing problems, which I just don't know where that's coming from, is possibly a sense of comfort. You know, that's the only possible downside, is that there is. It's like a really terrific, comfortable baby town where things are good. People can afford to be open-minded and all of those wonderful things, but is there a level of complacence? Now that's a question that needs to be thought about. It's, you know, we're not picking up a sense of complacence in the data, but you know, having had that challenge thrown out, maybe that's what this is all about, is to say, yeah, we can't sort of rest on our laurels. It's dying. Like, get your act together. Yes.
Do you do equivalent research in Hamilton and Christchurch, which are bigger cities?
Yes. Look, this is really New Zealand-wide research. So we're doing about 12,000 interviews, you know, on a weekly basis, rolling out to 12,000 a year, and doing the trends. This is our first drill down into the data. But yes, I think one of the things that will be very interesting, for instance, is to look at Christchurch previously and what it will be like over the next couple of years. And of course we can run the data on pretty much any geographic area to do a profile of that. So you can do a profile of an electorate or a city or whatever it is that you want to look at.
Have you seen any insights into why does people keep moving to Auckland?
Why do people keep moving to Auckland? Well, they're coming from places like Asia, and I think they're coming to Australia from Asia, and they're coming to New Zealand from Asia. So I think that we are seeing an increasing Asianisation of our countries. It's not a takeover, it's just a gradual, you know, people come here for education, a better life, and Australia is exactly the same sort of thing. People are coming more at the moment. I think you'll see this increase as an economy grows. When there's more employment, more sense of things going on, you'll have a greater influx. We're having a greater influx at the moment in Australia. These are good countries to live in. Let's not kid ourselves.
Did you survey people at all on what sort of challenges they thought New Zealand or their area were facing or going to face in the future?
Not specifically. It's the kind of thing that comes out a little bit when we look at New Zealand as a whole. So things like crime, unemployment, those things, and those are very open-ended. It's an absolutely open-ended question.
Sure.
So, you know, if anyone's interested in a particular area, we can drill down and start to pull out the actual words that people use. So, for instance, one that came out much more strongly in Auckland was concerns about immigration and asylum seekers, refugees and things like that.
Yeah.
So there are nuanced differences between different areas. Were there 3 questions and we've only, yes?
Do you have, what are the figures of people, New Zealanders moving to Auckland versus external migrants coming into the city?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer to that. I don't think we even asked the question. I think you'd probably get that from New Zealand Post.
And is your research survey online available?
Some of this data is available online. These presentations will be, and the press releases will be. Other than that, call PIP, and we can pull out some specific data for you. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, just a comment, following up on your comment about you coming to Wellington if there was big data available. What exactly did you mean, and where does your survey technique kind of line up in the kind of data that you can obtain compared to the kind of data that's now available, to the likes of Facebook and Google by mining what we are actually doing online?
Oh, that's a really good question. Goes to the heart of our business at Roy Morgan Research, to be honest. It really does. So what you've got in this whole information space is you've probably got 2 kinds of information. Stuff where it's almost like just watching what people are doing. It's a bit like you go into the supermarket and you see people never go to the top shelf. It's that sort of observation, which I've always thought was very powerful, so long as you're in the right supermarket. If you pick one supermarket versus another one, you get a really skewed view. And it's very much the same with things like Facebook, is that, we've seen that Facebook is used by the majority now. It's about 56%, I think, just from memory. But not everyone's using it that much. So I have a Facebook page, and I probably haven't been there, for weeks. I think my kids have probably put things there that I don't even want to know. But so you wouldn't see much of what I'm doing on Facebook, but you'd know exactly what my 24-year-old daughter's doing. So you'll get quite a skewed view of what's going on. The world, though, in terms of really understanding what's happening with the whole population, is going to be both. It's going to be a combination, because we can get very deep information about what people are doing from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from their shopping receipts and things like that. Everything we do online is aggregatable and being able to be made sense of. But what Roy Morgan's doing increasingly, until that happens, you need these big surveys. You just need to know how everyone's behaving, not just the ones online. What we're looking at doing now into the future is that using our surveys as a framework to enable people to model an understanding of, well, that's what people on Facebook are doing, what does that mean for the rest? Sort of provide a lens to understand all of this. And the other thing, of course, is that there's so much data in all of these places that, you just drown in it. It's really quite difficult to do more than have a little look and get a qualitative sense. Hear the language, see what's being discussed, but not to be able to generalise. Definitely not to be able to look at serious trends. You're just picking up snippets of things.
Two of your sort of statistics surprise me in terms of how different they are from the official central government kind of statistics and perceptions. And one of them is the unemployment one.
Yes.
And the other one was the home ownership one, which, if I remember, there's other people in the room that know more about this than me, but if I remember, I think that the official statistics are, you're probably showing higher home ownership than they are, and in fact yours is flat and growing, flat/growing,
yes.
Whereas the official statistics are indicating that number's dropping back quite, on a steady trend downwards. So if you've got an explanation for
the
why
latter
that
one,
might be.
we're actually tracking what happens in the market, official stats for things like home ownership, and I think it might be to do with whether you're talking about people living in those kinds of homes, the number of people living in a home that's owned or has a mortgage or is rented, versus households. So they will often present slightly different stories. But give Pip your card and we'll come back and explain it a little better.
And the employment one, because that's a
The
big thing for
employment
Wellington.
one is huge, isn't it? It's really huge. And you know, it's even more, there's a bigger differential in Australia. And it really is a definitional thing. And I'm, you know, I try and be extremely careful not to say that the government stats are wrong. You know, you have to be, they are what they are. They've been asked the same way for many, many years, and they were all decided, you know, in the 50s or 60s, this is how we're going to measure unemployment. They're not fudged, you know, because plenty of people say, oh yeah, the government's fudging it, they're doing this. That's not the case. They're an agreed way of measuring unemployment. The problem we have is that fundamentally, you know, we know that the world's changed with things like a lot of two-income families. You've got, you know, mum and dad have got the kids in childcare, one of them loses their job, and what do? The first thing is you take the child out of childcare because you're paying to have them minded while you were working. You're no longer that week available for work. So if you do that, you're not counted in the government unemployment statistics. This is not a secret, it's all clear, but to us, the real simple measure of unemployment and people who are looking for work is to simply ask, you know, are you employed full-time or part-time? If you're not employed, well, are you looking for work? Are you a student? Are you retired, or you just don't work? Like you're not pushing people, and you just track that. And when I've had a lot of discussions with the Australian Bureau of Statistics, not the New Zealand people, but I'm sure the same thing would be the case. The Australian Bureau of Statistics say, well, you're picking up people who are not absolutely immediately available in that week. We are picking up people who've given up looking. So one of the big things that happens, and this is why the lines don't just go like that, they actually go like that. When unemployment starts to go up, people just lose heart and they stop looking. They're no longer counted in the unemployment figures, but they've just, you know, kind of got really depressed and stopped looking. Those are the things that you have to measure.
Your Wellington story, though, on a national level, that's the case, your numbers will work. But my recollection of what you said about Wellington on that table that showed, we've got
More
officially
people employed.
high unemployment relative to what we're used to here, but your number was showing that we had virtually none. So that's, so in other words, the national situation.
No, you've still got unemployment. This will get boring for most people. The unemployment measure is the percentage of people who are unemployed or looking for work. That's the top bit, and the bottom is the workforce. It's not the population, it's the workforce. It's a percentage of the workforce. And the workforce is defined as people who are employed or looking for work. So your numerator, the top bit, and the denominator both move around. And it's quite confusing. It's not the government's fudging things, it's just, you know, fundamentally a confusing statistic. So there's two numbers that I like to look at. One is employment as a percentage of the population, you know, because that's really pretty basic, pretty simple. And then the other one is hours worked. And we measure hours worked in Australia, and do we measure it in New Zealand? I don't know that we do.
We do.
Okay, well then what we're seeing is, we've seen in Australia, even when unemployment is seen to be flat, hours worked has trended down consistently. So you go, okay, fewer hours are being worked. Even if there are the same number of people, they're working less hours, there's underemployment. It's a real story. And my view is that it's really, really important to know how many people want to be working and haven't got a job. So it's so important. It's like if the government sees their KPI as being the official unemployment stat, that's fine. Use that as your KPI. But make policies based on the reality that there are a whole lot more people who see themselves as unemployed, are wanting to have work. Don't make the mistake of using the KPI as the thing that you make policy about. You know, around interest rates or all of those really important economic decisions should be based on truth.
talk, and it strikes me through all of this, that if you talk about dying areas, it's the rest of New Zealand. It seems to me
Because
that...
they're older?
Yeah, because they're older. There's ageing population in the more provincial New Zealand. Is that a trend that you see globally?
Absolutely. Oh, globally, in the Western world. I mean, it's like the trends, the ageing population is a Western phenomenon. You know, some of the other places are younging. But yes, and typically what we're seeing is more rural or non-city based areas are just really struggling. And it's not surprising, is it? Because these places, they were either farming or they were manufacturing, you know, there'd be a manufacturing plant or something like that. And as Western costs of manufacturing become more expensive relative to places like China, and those industries really struggle, they close down, the town dies. So it's quite a serious structural issue that's going on. Maybe I'm closer to it in Australia. It does seem much more obvious in our data in Australia, but it's happening here as well. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's really important. You know, I put forward that Canberra should basically close the doors and they should put all of their departments into rural Australia. Because basically you don't need Canberra, you have these rural centres, and you put a government department into a rural or a non-metropolitan centre, you take the jobs there, you create the go-ahead attitude, you know, you take young, bright, go-ahead people, they build coffee shops, they want theatres, and they build worlds, as opposed to unemployment, people giving up and dying. So it's happening
I
everywhere.
think it's important not to generalise about rural New Zealand as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you look at the economic picture in Southland, Waikato and Taranaki, it's very different to
Yes.
the picture in Northland. So I
No,
think,
no, you're absolutely right.
I
And
think alongside this
generalisation.
picture, you have to consider regional GDP, the composition of the economy, etc., etc. So
You are so right, and good that you picked me up on that, because there are areas, and it doesn't matter where they are, but they're hubs and they're vibrant, and you know that they can be vibrant for lots of different reasons, but there's a reason for them being vibrant. There'll be a strong arts community or an alternative community, or there'll be
or a dairy
some,
industry.
or a dairy industry, or
Or a
something.
port.
But without, and this is what's happening, the ones that still have a core lifeblood, brilliant. It's the ones that if that dairy industry shut down, that place would very quickly die. And so, no, you're absolutely right. It's not that blanket stuff. And even with our data, you look at it and then you have to go, hang on, what about that pocket? What's that one? And you have to pull it out because that's okay. And that's why I'm saying you can put a government department into a place and create a hub. I'm sure there are other ways to do it. Well, thank you all for coming. If anyone wants to hang around and ask questions, feel free, but the time's probably up, so people need to leave. Thank you all for coming. I hope you found it interesting.